session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right, everyone. So this is the last Abhidhamma class that we'll be having before till we restart in the new year, right? Because next week it'll be the 26th of December. And that is usually a time we spend with family and eating and eating everything we shouldn't. So I will allow you to eat from morning till night without having to think about the Abhidhamma. All right, everyone. So now let us get started with the Abhidhamma, which we finished to a certain extent, but we have a little bit more to go. Can someone remind me on where we finished? Which
Bhante,
yes.
We did on page 324, we did until the end of presence conditions, you know, and then we have to do the decisive support conditions today.
Decisive support conditions.
Oh. Yeah, decisive support.
Thank you so much. Yes. So now we will start with decisive support. Right. Now, what is decisive support? Just to remind ourselves before we move on to sort of breaking down the bits and parts of decisive support. What is decisive support? Decisive support condition is when the whole mind or the object at hand, or rather the element at hand, poses or has an importance where it is decisive to the way the mind would operate. Is that clear, everyone? Right? Would you like to read the extract from the book on decisive support as well? Let us go to, oh, here it is, page number 315. 315. Decisive support condition. Of the three types of this condition, object decisive, proximity decisive, and natural decisive support, right? Object decisive support is a condition where the conditioning state is an exceptionally desirable or important object which causes the conditioned states, the mental phenomena that apprehend it, to arise in strong dependence on it. Is that understood? In strong dependence on it. So the conditioning states arise in strong dependence on the object comprehended. The object is very much sought out for or exceptionally desirable or important, right? Exceptionally desirable or important. Now, let us take exceptionally desirable, we understand. What is important, right? Important is, now let us take a spreadsheet, right? A accounting document, right? When we look at an accounting document, the totals that we see, right? Net profit, net loss, right? The places where the accounting document must balance is very important, isn't it? If it doesn't balance, then something is off. So now what is important? The balances. Do you understand? Is that clear, everyone? Right? So now let us say rice and curry, right? Let's, without rice, you cannot have the curry. We are not used to eating curry without rice, right? The rice is of importance, right? Even if one curry goes off or you don't make it properly, the rice is very important, isn't it? You're not going to eat bad rice, right? Likewise, in whatever scenario, whatever situation, whatever scenario, whatever situation, at that, to that point, what is important, right? Now, if you sit at your computer, the mouse and keyboard is important. Do you understand, everyone? Without which this important can change. Now, when you have the mouse and keyboard, now you want to open Zoom. So what happens now? Zoom becomes important. Do you understand? The mind is in strong dependence of that object. Is that clear, everyone? Right? So the important, or what is important, can change, right? It is not one set thing. At a given point in time, what is required and absolutely necessary for you to get done what you need to get done. Do you understand? Is that clear? Right? Now, decisive support condition of, okay, we've gone through one. Now, proximity decisive support is identical with proximity condition with respect to the conditionings and conditioned states, but differs from it slightly in the forces of the conditions. Sorry. Proximity is the force which causes the succeeding mental states to arise immediately after the preceding states have ceased. Right? Proximity is the force which causes the succeeding mental states to arise immediately after the preceding states have ceased. Right? Now we must also read in between the lines to understand that proximity is not simply that one ceases to give about the arising of another. Now, if you are to wash your hands with some sort of dye on your hands, it will get onto the clothes, right? Likewise, what is going to happen here? The succeeding mental states to arise immediately after the preceding states is what it means. When we must read in between the lines to understand that the arising states after the preceding are conditioned by or through proximity condition to allow its arising. Meaning that the nature which has just ceased, right, is going to have some sort of relative effect on what arises. Do you understand, everyone? Right? On what arises, right? On what arises. Now, because they are strongly dependent on the ceasing. Now, they are again strongly dependent. Is that noted, everyone? Please note the strongly dependent. The mind is strongly, or the continuity of the mind is strongly dependent on the ceasing, which allows for the preceding chitta, chetasika, or whatever dhammas to arise. Is that clear? Is that clear, everyone? Decisive, right? Decisive. Natural decisive support is a wide relation that includes as a conditioning state all past or material phenomena that become strongly efficacious for the arising at a subsequent time of the conditioned state, which are subsequent chittas and chetasikas. For example, prior lust may be a natural decisive support condition for volitions of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, etc. Is that clear, everyone? Right? Is that clear? Prior faith, just like, for example, a student in maths without the basics or understanding the basics of math is not going to be solving anything advanced. Right? Without having a solid foundation on the basics, right? Can you expect a student who does not understand the numbers to add numbers? You cannot. Knowing the numbers is progressively going to now be a support for that person to do the calculations, even the simple ones, right? This adds up, everyone. Volitions of piety, right? Volitions prior faith for, volitions of almsgiving, undertaking precepts, and practicing meditation, the gaining of health for happiness and energy, the onset of sickness for sorrow and torpor, etc. Is that clear, everyone? Right? Meaning, again, it has a decisive force. The power which you hold at this moment with regards to any line of operation is determined by what you have or what you've done in the past. Is that clear, everyone? Yeah? Any questions on decisive support? Right? You simply need to understand the nature of it. What is that? Decisive support is when the mind is strongly dependent upon the conditioning states. Do you understand? The conditioned states are strongly dependent on the conditioning states. Do you understand? Is that clear? Yeah, lovely. Now let us go down. Here we go. Right, decisive. Now we have first object predominance. Object predominance. Object predominance condition is when, what happens in object predominance? Object predominance is when the object dominates the conditioned state, or the object that arises, or the object that forms the base for or is the conditioning state determines the conditioned states. Do you understand? Is that clear? Do we remember that? Object predominance, right? Is that clear, everyone? I don't believe you. So let's go on. Object predominance. Here we are. Number 3.1. Right? 3.1. Predominance. Adhipati Pachya. Aramana Adhipati Pachya. Now remember what I just mentioned, everyone. Right? What happens? An object is taken. This object, right, is sought out for. It is something that the mind lusts for, or the mind takes great pleasure in, or is something that is important. Remember that one, right? So now what is the object? Now look at this, everyone. Object, this is object condition, right? Object predominant condition. So the object, whatever object that is taken, is not just an object, it is an object of some sort of significance. Significant for its pleasure, or significant for its importance for that time. Is that understood, everyone? Now, what is the object? Look at this. 18 concrete matter. 18 concrete matter. The 18 concrete matter out of the 28 are what? These are solid objects that can be taken as object, isn't it? Concrete matter, right? And 84 chittas, right? 84 chittas, excluding hate, delusion, body consciousness, pain. Why? Because hate to delusion, of course, just deludes us. When delusion arises, the object, it is obscure. It's weak. That's the nature of delusion. Do you understand? Right? When delusion, vitakka, Sakkaya Ditti, Vichikiccha, doubt and restlessness, right? Doubt and restlessness. What do these two do? It obscures the object. right? You cannot grasp the object with a certain confidence with when delusion arises. Do you understand? Is that clear, everyone? So 2 hate-rooted, because hate you push away. 2 delusion, because delusion has no solidity there. You can't take any object with clarity when you have with a delusion consciousness. And body consciousness with pain. Why? Because we repel pain. Is that clear? It is not an object that can attain or achieve a state of importance, nor can it achieve a state of pleasure. So to dominate the mind or the conditioning states that arise based upon the mind. Is that clear, everyone? Right? Is that clear? Any questions? No questions? Okay. 47 Chaitasikas, excluding hate, envy, avarice, worry, and doubt, everything to do with those 8, or the dosa chatukka, which arises with the 2 hatred-rooted consciousnesses, right? 2 hatred-rooted consciousnesses. Then we have Nibbana. Then we have Nibbana. Then we have Nibbana, right? Nibbana is the main object that is persevered when Magga and Phala arises, right? And after Phala Samapatti, you achieve Phala Samapatti when you have Nibbana as object. What? How can we take Nibbana as object? Taking the Phala Chitta as object. Remember that, everyone? Right? Taking the Phala Chitta as object. Now this object is taken. It is pleasurable. It is important. Right? Pleasurable, important. Now what happens? Now what happens? Conditioned by that object arises the minds required to grasp and hold on to that object. Right? Now the whole, your entire environment becomes of that object. Now look at that. 8 greed-rooted chittas, 8 great wholesome chittas, 4 great functional chittas with knowledge, 8 supramundane chittas, Nibbana, taking Nibbana as object, and there are 45 Chaitasikas, right? There are 45 Chaitasikas, excluding hate and excluding the 2 illimitables. Excluding hate and 2 illimitables. Hate, why? Because we push away hate. Illimitables, why? Because illimitable object is outside, right? We spread. Do you understand? It is not do we have a longing for that? No, we spread it outwards. Illimitables, mudita and karuna. Yeah, we spread it outwards. Is that understood? Now, 18 concrete matter, 84 chittas, Nibbana, 47 Chaitasikas, they form that pleasurable or important object. Right? Pleasurable or important object. Now, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions? No questions? No questions, anyone? Yeah. So what if, so I will ask the question that I think you should ask. Right. Which is, I mean, if you look at it, or if you take, for example, clinging to hatred, you get what I mean. Now, when a person is deluded, is filled with sort of, let us say, resentment for a person, let us say. This person does not want to let go of this resentment, right? The dosa becomes this dosa becomes this vyapada becomes patiga. Get what I mean? Right? In such a circumstance, I would ask that question, why is, isn't it that we hold on to and we sort of relish in that sense of hatred? Isn't it, everyone? Yeah, relish in that hatred, sometimes even enjoy hating a person. And if we have the power to hurt a person, and we enjoy, some enjoy hurting a person, because they might have caused pain or you pain or something like that, right? Then how do we relate this? Why is, object predominance not there? Is that a feasible question, everyone? Yeah, you get what I mean, right? Yeah, the nature of object predominance, right, is clarity. When it comes to object predominance, the object is the one that we catch on to. Do you understand? When it is pain, for example, now let us take the occasion or event or the scenario of me wanting to hurt a person. Think about that situation, right? We want to hurt a person, right? Now, what are we thinking of? Let us say, first of all, let's start with ruining the person's reputation, right? So when someone is speaking of the person's good about the person, right? We try to sort of indirectly or directly say something that would tarnish that person's reputation. But this person did this, huh? I was also very shocked to hear this, but I was very shocked, but this had happened. Can you believe it? Right? Right, now we must have an example to understand this. Now look at this, everyone. What is the conditioning state? 18 concrete matter, 84 chittas. Just think about that. 18 concrete matter, 84 chittas. And of course, Nibbana is also here, right? Nibbana is supramundane object. What do these have in common? This is the object. Now let us think about, let us take a good example. Let us take, you go to the flower shop, right? You see some beautiful lilies, and lilies, I believe, I quite like lilies more than roses because lilies smell quite good as well, right? And they're beautiful when it slowly blooms as well, right? So, so you take some lilies, right? Now you see them, they've not even bloomed as yet, but you know how it's going to be. You know the fragrance it's going to give out. So you now buy them, you bring them home, put them into a tall, nice crystal vase, and you're going to see it slowly blooming and filling your house with that sweet fragrance, right? Yeah. Now, the lilies in that occasion, see, you're doing everything to be with that object. What is the object? The lily. In hatred, right, that occasion, you want to now defame the person. What becomes the object? The object shifts, right? Now you're creating, for example, let us say, creating stories to defame the person, right? Now from the person, you want to repel the person, you want to destroy the person, but you take another object. What? Defaming. Do you understand? You create stories. The object shifts. The process is not to hold on to the lilies. In the present process, it was all about the lilies, right? It was all about the lilies. Now what happens? Your object shifts. What happens in that shift? You cling on to negative emotions and aspects, and you want to proliferate that. Do you understand? Is that clear? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Right? Now, in the process, in object predominance, it's the object itself that predominates the mind, dominates the mind. Do you understand? When we have delusion, delusion cannot take a clear object. One, when we have hatred, we push away the object and we take in other forms to hate or to show our hate. There you find here envy, avarice, worry, doubt. Doubt is, of course, connected to the delusion, but worry, avarice. Now you see, now let us say we hate this person again. You're taking hate. Now you're worried that this person is going to cause you some harm. Now, what is the object? The harm that person could bring. Do you understand? Does that make sense? Yeah, the person is going to meet another person that you also know, that's in your circle. Now you're worried that that person that you do not like is going to speak ill of you to the person that you know. Do you understand? Now, hasn't the shift of object happened? It has shifted. It has taken now a mano vinyana as object. What is a mano vinyana? The creation of the story, proliferated by the hindrances that arise with hate, worry, specifically in this case. Do you understand the difference? Is that clear? Any questions? Dil? Clear? Can't hear you. Can't hear you still. Can't hear you still. What's happened to your mic today? Can't hear you, Dil. Dil, you're speaking, but we can't hear you. Okay, up until Dil fixes her mic. Anyone else who has any questions? No? Is that clear what I explained? Yeah? Is it clear do you have any doubt on how that shift happens in hate and delusion? Delusion, of course, there's nothing to speak. Delusion, you cannot take the object. The nature of delusion is that it destabilizes you and makes it impossible for you to take an object. Right? Now, for example, if we are to take doubt, when doubt proliferates and spreads throughout the mind, now the doubt that you first had towards one specific person in your life spreads to you, now spreading that doubt over so many other occasions and people. Right? It spreads. Right? The Buddha connects doubt, right, to one of the most dangerous sorts of hindrances that you can have, because you will be unable to practice or to really adhere to no object. You will not find space or solidity in any object, the Buddha says, right? Vichikiccha, right? He compares it. Just imagine in your life, let us say you first sort of started doubting one person, right? And then you doubt everyone, right? If you are doubting everyone, how can we live? Do you understand the gravity of it, right? That's spreading.
One thing is doubt as bad as restlessness or the same, would you say?
Doubt as bad as restlessness. Doubt as bad as restlessness. Doubt as bad as restlessness. No, the Buddha says doubt is bad.
Oh.
Wait, hold on. Restlessness. Touch. No, it is doubt. If I remember correctly, it is doubt. It is doubt.
Okay. Doubt is the worst one, right?
Yeah. Sakkaya Ditthi. Vichikiccha. Sure. Doubt. Doubt is the worst one. Doubt is also the one that proliferates and creates creates mithya drushti,
Thank you, Bhante.
right?
Bhante, can you hear me?
Yes, but you're echoing now because you're on devices.
Yes, okay, I'll have to leave. I'll have to leave my iMac. I just, I want, can you hear me now, Bhante? Can you knock me off from the first one and just put me on the second one, which is...
If I remove you from the first one, you won't be able to go the back. But I
Oh.
okay.
The host will remove you from this meeting. I don't know. Okay. All right, can't have. Now the thing is, my computer, when the screen sharing fill the page, I can't access my unmute, and even though it can, so
That-
I just couldn't. But then when I come on the iPad, you know, now the doubt, Bhante, is in one way the third fetter, the Sangyojana that you break when you come to Sotapanna, the first stage, because that's Vicikiccha. But doubt and restlessness are also two of the hindrances. But on the other hand, when you go on those fetters, those Sangyojanas, restlessness come one but the last night. Am I making a mistake? Mana. So you get those Rupa Vachara, and then after that Mana, and then you get restlessness there. Oh, that's isn't it? Because Kukuchidvari. So you get it there. That's the ninth one that goes before you get avijja off and ignorance off. So in that way, would it be that it becomes a ninth one because it's more heavier? But of course, we know that doubt is very heavy. So I was just trying to work out in my mind, according to how they have been placed in these various tables, because we all know doubt is very good and skeptical doubt in the Buddha Dhamma Center.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so when it comes to doubt, right,
Yeah.
we can't take it now. For example, if we take the Sangyojanas and the removing or the vanquishing or the utter sort of disposing of the Sangyojanas, the Sangyojanas, the doubt or Vicikiccha is something that exists or is like the gatekeeper. If you have Vicikiccha, you're unable to even enter the path at any level. The fact that Uddhacca is only removed later on is testament to the fact that Uddhacca can be removed, even if it's the doubt, if it proliferates to such a level where, it like a virus that kills. It kills any form of hope for the person to understand the Dhamma, and they become absolute pillars of samsara itself. Why? Everything that arises, everything that is wholesome is doubted. Every possible teacher that could arise is doubted. Every teaching that is received is doubted. You get what I mean? That is why the Buddha says that this doubt, when it sort of proliferates, can be one of those sort of reasons leading to people becoming, or forever parts of samsara. Yeah.
I think I can, in my simple brain, kind of understand that, because just see, if you don't get rid of doubt, you are not even passing that first stage.
Exactly.
Yeah. While if you have passed that, at least you could have gone up to the first stage, second stage, and you can go up even. So you can go beyond that, because those past 5. So you can go up to Sakrudagami. We still having that restlessness, because the other 2 diminishes the patiga and the the covetousness, right, in kamachanda, and then completely removes it. But you can still be having restlessness. So I can understand why you can't even get to the first stage if you don't have the doubt. So therefore, it's the most important. Thank you, Bhante. Very clear. Thank you,
Right.
Bhante.
Now, is object predominance then clear for everyone? Does anyone else have a question? Okay, now we go on to base object predominance. Base object predominance support, nisaya. Right? Base object prenascence. Base object prenascence support, which is sometimes. Where else does it arise? It always arises at object condition and presence condition. Object condition and presence condition only sometimes arises in decisive support. Do you understand? We have base object prenascence here. In object, we have base object prenascence here. Right? It always arises in presence and object, but only arises sometimes in decisive support. Now let us go to base object prenascence. Right? Base object prenascence. Support condition. Base object. Here we go. Right. Prenascent support condition is a condition where the conditioning state causes the conditioned states to arise by serving as the support or foundation on which they depend. Support or foundation that they depend. The conditioning state is said to be related to the conditioned state in a manner similar to the way the earth supports trees and vegetation, or a canvas supports a painting. Two main categories of support condition are recognized. One, sahajata nisaya, sahajata, and purejata nisaya, prenascent support. Connascent support condition is identical in all relations. Let's go to 1 here. Prenascent support condition includes two subsidiary types. One is simple base prenascent support, vattu purejata nisaya, which is identical with base prenascence discussed under prenascence condition. Right? The other is called base object prenascent support, vatta rammana purejata nisaya. This refers to, now this is our one, this refers to the special case when a chitta arises supported by the heart base and at the same time makes that heart base its object. Now, is that clear how it becomes decisive support only sometimes? Now, in presence condition, that's all you need to know, right? Going back. Here. Now, in presence condition, the heart base and the mind has to both be present. Do you understand why it's always under presence condition? Right? Both of them need to be present. Right? The mind that takes the heart base as the object, what happens? The scenario is in Vatta Rammana Purejata Nisaya. The base is taken as object, Vatta Rammana Purejata Nisaya. Right? The heart is taken as object by the mind that arises from the heart base. Do you understand? So the mind and the heart are both present. That is why it's in present condition. Object condition, why? The object determines, or the object, which is the heart base, is centralized to that condition. Do you understand? Why sometimes? Sometimes why? If the object is clear or absolutely important, this is determined by the power of the contemplative awareness, the meditator. Do you understand? Right? When the heart base can be clearly taken as object, there is far more importance at it in comparison to the beginning stages. Is that understood? Right? So when the mind takes a heart base as the object, Sometimes it becomes decisive support. Why? When the object is clear, there's far more importance towards the object. What is the object? In this case, the heart base itself. Do you understand? Is that clear? Right? Now, for example, when we are able to, let's take the breath for as an example. Now, the breath meditation is what we are doing, anapanasati. At first, the breath is not clear. Right? When the breath becomes clear and the motions of the breath are clear, then can we not look at the breath objectively? Right? The same thing now in this case, in the heart base. Is that clear, everyone? Right. Now then we have object prenascence, sometimes arising and decisive support. Object prenascence. Object prenascence arises all the time with presence and object condition. Why? Because object prenascence, the object, what is taken as object prenascence, has arisen already, right, before the mind arose. Object prenascence. Is that clear, everyone? Right? Now, sometimes here, sometimes why? So object prenascence is always present. Why? Because the object and the mind that comprehends it is present together. Is that clear? Object prenascence. Why? Because the object becomes the forerunner in this condition, right? Because it takes the object, right? It's all based on the object. Sometimes why? Depending on how pleasant or pleasurable or important that object is. Do you understand? It becomes decisive support, right? It becomes decisive support. Now, then we have asynchronous karma. Is that clear? Can we go to asynchronous karma? Anyone who doesn't understand? Object? Yes.
Bhante, can I ask a very basic question? I'm sorry, but can I ask that?
Yeah. Go.
No, it's very clear. So it's very, when you explain and said, so when you can see the breath and when you can see it clearly, then it becomes predominant. So that we can understand. How do you actually visualize the heart base? And when you say when you can see it clearly, the breath is very anapanasati is very clear, and you can. So when you said it just the same, when the heart base, when you can object. So in meditation, how do you see the heart base clearly? I'm sorry, Bhante.
How do you see the heart base clearly? Well, I don't think, I mean, that is not a simple question, first of all.
I couldn't understand it, Bhante.
Now, today the Dhamma series, you're asking the difficult questions. Please cut me a break.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bhante. I'm trying hard. I don't have years of time to teach, and I also, I'm sorry, Bhante, but I don't have time to, because of all my personal things, to.
Okay. Let's not go there.
I ask
now, heart base, right? Heart base. Now, remember, we've just concluded our sutras on Indriya Bhavana, isn't it? Now, let's go to the answer is there, dear.
Right.
The answer is there. Now, Chakku, Sota, Gana, Jibha, Kaya, right? These are all, and Mano, right? These are all the Indriyas, the bases, right? Chakku Vinyana arises at the Chakkudvara, or the base of the eye, right? I don't have to repeat, no. What arises at the mind, though? Or the heart base? The heart base is the mind, though, right? What arises at the mind, though? Past object, future object, and present moment mind object. Do you understand? Right? present moment, mind object. This, now let us take the practice of Chittanupassana to make it clearer. Right? To make it clearer. When we first try to observe the mind is, of course, because we have not reached or that state of subtle observation, we might not be able to truly see what we want to see. Maybe we are just adverting to what we want to do or what we think it might be. But slowly, but with time and practice and patience, of course, you arrive at a position where things calm down, you let go. You are not in the doing motions, you're in the being motions more and more, better and better, that you come to now see the mind clearly. At that position, you can go deep into mind observation. What is mind observation? Mind observation is then mano vinyana arising from the hadivata. Does that make it clear? So your answer is everything other than chakku, sota, gana, jiva, kaya, vinyana falls under hadayadwara. The consciousness, then what consciousness can take hadayadwara is another question that we have to ask. Now, with hate, we are not going to be seeing anything. With lust, we are not going to be going too far with that as well. With delusion, we are not going to be going too far with that as well. I mean, no brainers, no questions there. What can we then see it with? We can see with jnana sampayutta, kusala, chittas. We can see it with the kriya chittas, right? We can go deep into those objects which are what? Manodwaraka. Right? Now, for example, deal again, if we take the jhana, initially we have the physical object, but then what becomes? What becomes the object? The manodwaraka viti becomes the object of the jhana. Right? Because we've contemplated so many times that the object, the physical object, now becomes born in mind. Now it's a mano object. Now you see. When that clarity improves and increases, now we can come into a state of presence, an acute presence with that object. That is what we're talking about here. Thank you for asking that question, because we did not, no one asked that question before.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. Is that clear, everyone? Right? I think that makes sense and easy for us to understand, because we've just done Indriya Bhavana. Right? Now, asynchronous karma. Any other questions, anyone? Before we move into asynchronous karma. Now, asynchronous karma, what is asynchronous karma? Asynchronous karma is nanakkanika karma. Right? Not sahajata karma, nanakkanika karma. Nanakkanika karma is when there is a gap between the time that the karma was committed and when the vipaka takes place. The result happens. There's a gap in between it. So I do something today, and I read the vipakas of it 10 years after. Or I've done something in my past life and I'm reaping the karmas of it right now. Nanakkanika karma. There's a gap. Now, nanakkanika karma is sometimes decisive support condition, but all the time karma condition. All the time karma condition, sometimes decisive support condition. Can you tell me when this happens? When does a past karma become a decisive moment in our consciousness? Decisive. Yes.
When it's a karuka karma. When it's like a ditta dhamma vedaniya karuka karma.
Be more specific.
When it's a very heavy karma, that
Be more specific. Be more specific.
Say, like if you like, well, shed the blood of the Buddha, I mean, Buddha is not there, but if you kill an arahant or even hurt your parents or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
What happened?
Then those karmas will always be like ditta dhamma vedana, they are garuka karma. So the next birth itself, the karma follows. You don't have to wait, not
How?
like that. Like
how?
because they from the Tutta Chitta, they are immediately, the Parisandhi Chitta and then the Bhavanga Chitta, they immediately go. There's no time for them to come like in the other two, like Achinna and Asana, where there can be gaps depending on whether your actions are repeatedly having or what you're thinking very close by. Whatever happens, that's going to happen.
Right. The two words that we're looking for is Kamma Nimitta, Gati Nimitta.
Gati Nimitta.
Right? Kamma Nimitta, Gati Nimitta. Why? Because the asynchronous Kamma at that point, that appears. And now decisive how? Now your next moments are going to be determined by the especially Gati Nimitta. Especially Gati Nimitta, but not limited to Gati Nimitta. Right? Not limited to Gati Nimitta. Is that clear, everyone? That is how decisive support, sometimes asynchronous, Nanakanika karma becomes decisive support. Because sometimes that asynchronous karma can, when it is powerful, it can come up during your time of dying process to alter the destinations that you are to be reborn. Do you understand?
So this Gati Nimitta is like, for example, if you had done such a heinous crime, you see the flames of purgatory even before you go.
The flames of purgatory, you start smelling, Kreta Bhumiyak Nangada, all of that. So the, whatever resembles that place that you're going to. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
All right. Then we have disassociation condition. Disassociation condition. What is disassociation condition? Association condition, disassociation condition. Right? Disassociation condition. Disassociation condition is when the chittas and the dhammas, the phenomena that arises together. However, they are disassociated by means of their nature, nama and rupa, like water and oil. Do you understand? They have a relationship, however, they will never become one. They are disassociated by means of their nature. Is that clear, everyone? Right? Is that clear? Why or how does disassociation condition? How does disassociation condition become decisive support? How does disassociation condition become decisive support? Now, here, disassociation. Disassociation condition has three parts: sahajata, pre-nascent, post-nascent, purvajata, pachajata. In all three instances, purvajata is A2A, is support nisaya condition, A2A base pre-nascent support, Vataramana purvajata. And post-nascence is same as 11, that is post-nascence here, right? Now let us take post-nascence here, right? Decisive support, decisive. Post-nascence. In the 5 aggregate plane, latter 85 chittas starting from first bhavanga, 52 chetasikas, right? 52 chetasikas. Now that is a difficult example to explain actually. No, let's start with another example. Opening, right? We'll take connaissance, right? Connaissance disassociation. In the 5 aggregate plane, at rebirth and existence, 75 chittas, excluding 4 immaterial sphere resultants, 10 sense consciousnesses, Arahat's death consciousness, right? 52 chetasikas. In the 5 aggregate plane during rebirth and at existence, the 75 chittas and 52 chetasikas, what do? They produce matter. What kind of matter? Sahajata matter, right? Connascent matter. Why is it decisive? Because this matter that is produced, if you let us say it is wholesome matter produced by wholesome 3-rooted consciousnesses, you're going to look beautiful. Your skin is going to be radiant. Your blood is going to going to go through the body smoothly. Your heart is going to purify the blood. Your white blood cells are going to be active and working very well. All of these things happen when you're happy. Correct? The matter that is produced, the type of matter that is going to be produced, is wholly dependent upon what? What types of consciousnesses produced or led to it arising. Do you understand, everyone? If you're angry all the time, if you're short-tempered, if your blood is boiling all the time, if you're cursing people from the time that you see dawn to the time that you, right? Are you going to be a good-looking person? Are you going to be healthy? Are you going to have any of those things? Is your life going to be peaceful? If your life is going to be full of happiness and everything that you ever wanted and contentment and nothing? Do you understand? That is what it means. Why? How is it decisive? How is it decisive sometimes? When the way these, now when the we might do something good. Let us say giving something to a beggar just as we walk past, just kidding, right? Let us say you're in a merit-making ceremony, a rare situation or occasion. You've gone to, let us say, Bodh Gaya, or for another person, their place of worship, which is very well renowned. You've spent a lot of money to get there. You made a lot of sacrifices. You planned for it months in advance and all of these things. Now you see, right? Although the act, even giving a beggar, the thing might have been, is kusala. However, the importance placed on it determines how strong the connascent matter is going to be. Do you understand? Yeah? Is that clear, everyone? That is why, for example, when people go on retreat and they come back, their skins are glowing. Because Bhavanamaya Kusala surpasses all others. If you're, of course, able to do it properly. Right? Right? If you're able to do it properly, it surpasses the others. Yes, dear.
So Bhante, is that the same way that when you are giving, if you give it to more highly attained sainthoods or to arahants, as compared to just giving it to a beggar, or even washing your bowl and putting into the drain where even the worms can eat, that is also direct. If your mind is clear before and while you're doing it and afterwards, if it's in wholesome state, that you have the power of it is very much more, because the person you're giving to is of a much elevated, expanded consciousness. If you give it to those.
Karma is not black and white. However, the Buddha explains that the karma vipaka can be magnified by certain people, right? Which is, it can be magnified with the preciousness of the person who receives it, right? Even though the person might not be knowing that this is an arahant, still, even not knowing, right? It can be magnified in such a manner. But of course, let us say the arahant, the Buddha says this. The example the Buddha uses to explain to Ananda, is it the dana that someone gives me, or is it the dana that I give someone else? That is far more sort of Mahatpala Mahansansa. Ananda says, of course, you are the best in the world, blah, blah, blah. You are the one, in someone giving it to you, the karma will be far more. I shouldn't have said blah, blah, blah. Sorry. Yeah, someone giving something to you is, of course, of great fruit and great merit, then the Buddha corrects Ananda, says, no, Ananda. There is no one in this world who knows the preciousness of generosity as much as the Tathagata knows the preciousness of the generosity. Meaning, the Tathagata's understanding, prajna, concerning generosity surpasses all others in a manner that, I mean, no one, because the Tathagata has that jnana sampyutta nature of the Tathagata makes the Tathagata's giving even to, let us say, a person with wild behavior and wild characteristics. The Tathagata's jnana sampyutta quality will make it Mahatpala Manasans. Do you understand?
Thank you, Bhante. Does the opposite also hold? Can you remember when Sama, when she died and with all her maidens and she was burned, they were saying why she had to die was because in a previous birth when she was with the maidens in a high noble family, there had been an arahant who was made behind the bush and it was burned. But she didn't know it was an arahant. But still, that was just like a wholesome thing, you may not know, somebody may come. And I think that is also the why Kujuttara was there because she had been a noble person. She didn't know that Mahinimwansi was coming was an arahant. And she also every birth she was born as a domestic or even to the king, though she had done things that. Thank you, Bhante. So it's really, that's why you must guard your mind at every time, because you don't know whom you're dealing with, isn't it? You don't know whether somebody is any of these things. So if you always try to do the like the Indriya Bhavana when you look at your mind,
I mean, it's not only, of course, you don't know who you're dealing with also, even if they are not arahants, right? Now let us say you curse a person while that person has metta on you. Your cursing is going to backfire 1,000-fold. Right?
Yes.
Now let us put the arahants away, because arahants, that's another ball game, no? Right? Even normal people. Now let us say a parent. Right? Or a person who is trying to practice and is genuinely, trying to practice, of course, makes mistakes and makes mistakes in such a manner that, people are unhappy or, whatever, and people scold and all of that, but that person is spreading metta, right? Or trying to spread metta, or is genuinely sort of living with or trying to live with metta, living and trying to live, living and trying to live. Those are very important distinctions made by the Buddha that would sort of make your karma far more bad.
Bhante, there is something to consider, I feel, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Bhante, now you're living in a household and you are quite, because you're older, more mature, and whatever reasons, you're much more, have had the opportunity. You are practicing metta and all these other, the bhavanas and the anusatis and things like that. So when you are looking at the end and when you are going to transcend anything and transmute the condition, because you know the qualities of, having unwholesome thoughts and things, you are all the time radiating metta. Now the other person is not practicing in the house, be it a child, be it a spouse, they are not practicing. So, and they don't like all these things, and they prefer to do the things that mundane people like. For example, you are trying to listen to a program and they want the...
You don't need example, we all understand.
So then, Bhante, so for this, is that the reason, Bhante? Sorry. Is that the reason, Bhante, that they say that for the first, when you're Prutagana and you're practicing, when you're Sovan and Sakradagam, you can still be like in the house and do those. But when you get high, then really you should move away, because others don't know and they get a lot of sin because they don't know that they are poking fun at you and doing things, and they say it's better to move. Is that the reason, Bhante? That you should go?
Not really. That's not the reason. It's just the fact that when you are sort of in a higher state, you get what I mean?
You go on your own. But also, Bhante, for the others who don't know even the first two stages, they don't know, and so it's just ignorance, and they ridicule or they make it very difficult, or say we are good people. So it's difficult to live in, because I remember when I used to go to Amaravati and I saw these young girls all coming to be the first to become anakarika. One day when somebody had to go and she was very, very good and there had been some incident, she came and cried and said, you don't know how lucky you are because you can be in a home where not drinking is accepted, not having a boyfriend and, not having kind of consensual, whatever, sexual activity before you marry. You don't take, because it's accepted, or not drinking. But for them, they come there and they get really they get sort of blinded by the Dhamma. Then they go to try to practice and then they are a misfit. Nobody likes them. So they have to come to practice in there. And then they get sucked into the whole thing, but they actually haven't done the paramis. So they can't stay. And then when they go, they have lost their professions. So that's a real problem there, Bhante. Well,
sounds like a big whole problem. What to do?
Yeah. And I never understood, because I was thinking like in our homes, we value those things, right? But these children are not valuable. So they leave and come. But being blinded and wanting to go forth is one thing, not having the parami to do that is another thing. So therefore they then leave without going forth and pabaja. They leave and they cry and cry because they said if they could have done it from home, they could have done it in a more balanced way. Thank you, Bhante. Anyway.
Absolutely. And I sometimes wish that some people who are pabaja actually do leave. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen like that.
That's true. But Bhante, when they actually practice Patimokkha and things like that, and if you're true to the practice, then I think they make it very difficult for them to stay. But in temples and places where they don't practice, and nobody knows your mind. And that's why I really value temples which have the Patimokkha ceremony, because you come and openly discuss these things and can be guided and things like that. Anyway, very interesting. So more and more I'm realizing that being born Asian and to this family, but an advantage we have, though we are second class here, and it's more difficult and we have to do more to prove ourselves in our professions, that we have, sansarically, we have something that is far higher than our white skins and blue eyes and gold hair.
No comment. No comment. No comment. Right. Now, yeah. Now, is that understood, everyone? The conditioning state, the conditioned states that we experience, right? The conditioned states that we experience, all of these conditioned states that are experienced are determined by the quality of these states here, right? By the quality of these states here. Is that understood? That is why now here in the dissociation, the matter that arises depends on the quality or what type of mind this is. Is that clear? That is why connascence in this case is connascent. Then we have a 6C. Right? 6C. 6C is connascence at rebirth in the 5 aggregate plane, 4 mental aggregates and the heart base. The 4 mental aggregates support the heart base supports the mental aggregates. Right. Now, because that is so, the 4 mental aggregates and then the heart base. Because the 4 mental aggregates are there, the heart base exists. Because the heart base is there, the 4 mental aggregates can exist. Do you understand? Do you see how that's decisive there? Right? Yeah. Now, then we have disassociation. Then we have prenascence, A to A, B. A to A and B. Base prenascence, base object prenascence. Base object prenascence we've already discussed. The heart base taken as object of the same Chitta and Chaitanya, it supports as base. We've discussed that already. Right? Base object base prenascence support is during existence, the six material, because of six material bases, the 85 chittas, 52 chaisikas arise. The quality, if your vision is blurry, that is going to affect the quality of the chittas and the chaitasikas, isn't that, everyone? See, right? If your vision is very clear, that is going to affect the chittas and chaitasikas. Is that clear, everyone? See, decisive support. Now, is that clear? Right? Then we have, of course, let's do pre-nascence, post-nascence. Post-nascence 11. Post-nascence. Now, post-nascence is a little bit more complicated, right? Because post-nascence, the conditioned state is present before the conditioning state, right? Conditioned state is present before the conditioning state. But if the conditioned state did not have the power to exist, then the conditioned state would not be present because it lacks that support. Do you understand? Decisive. Yeah, that one you will have to think about, because also relating to the condition, because it is now, if the person has a lifespan or the ability to live karmically up until the age of 80, right? Hence, 79 is possible because the person is able to live up till 80. Or the person, let us say the person's body is able to live up until the age of 80, healthy enough to live up till 80. Hence, he comes up to 79. If the body was weak, then wouldn't reach 79. Right? In the same manner now, that support that is present, the post-nascence, that energy that supports that lifespan, that health, all of that, is what allows the conditioning state to arise. It's determined by that. Without the energy and lifespan supported by 80 years, you will not reach 79. Do you understand? So how, that is what comes to decisive. Do you live this long? Yes or no? Depending upon the strength that is present. Where is that strength present? From the karma that you were born. Right? That karma can, however, be hindered. Let us say you're born Trihetuka Pratisandhi into a time where the lifespan is 100. But you, through your actions in the present moment, you drink, you do drugs, and you know, all of these things, you put poison into your system, drink every single day, all of these things, you know, very young age, you have alcoholic cirrhosis and all of these things. You don't take care of your system, you're going to die young. Right? Now, but you can't also say that some people do all of that and then live so long as well. Right, do all of that and live so well as well, you know, but you can't really say that. But you get what I mean, right? Meaning sometimes you have the karma you're born, but there can be certain things that disturbs the karma. And sometimes when people are living in suffering, some things happen in a way that your suffering and dukkha prolongs as well, right? So you live longer to, you know, in a way to sort of pau kamatama jivat. Yeah. So yes. Yeah.
But like that, you say sometimes you live long, like in dementia, we don't know anything, but you suffer because they power commitment. But I have known cases where people have clearly had illnesses where they, whatever they came with, they got cancers and things. But because they had lived such wholesome lives, so not only the physical thing or not drinking and things like that, but their mind states have been so good. And because they have been practicing for a long time and have had the opportunity, they have also, when they should have died, say, at 65, 70, they have lived to be 80 or more, even though medically they were so told that they can't, because of that. And in fact, the way the monks explain that is because for a long time, They have done mental purification of their state. So even though the bodies had illnesses, they managed, of course the doctor says spontaneous resolution, but the monks say that it's like that. So it really, this come a lot of, when you say it's a hetupala thing, that it's a causal thing, it is so vital when we are doing this Indriya Bhavana and doing it. What you realize, Bhante, is that it's causal and mental, it's causal physical, and how wonderful it is that you have the power, unless you have done these Garuka karmas and things, that if you come into the Dhamma early, and if you put in the Samadhi and the effort and the Sammasati, that really, Bhante, we have a lot of hope.
Absolutely. But what I would say, Dil, all the time, because, you are proven sometimes that, karma is not a frame that can be sort of, because it's so complex. And yes, and there is no one frame that can be applied. Now, just as I mentioned, sometimes, people who do bad die away, very badly and very poorly. Some people, we see and everyone knows, but live so well. Right? So well that even people question karma itself. Right? Some people, all they've been doing in their lives is good. But they suffer. They suffer, they suffer, they suffer. They do for other people, but all they get in return, even their children don't respect them, however much good they do. Karma is so diverse. We've spent so much time in our samsara, things, and all of that we cannot fit one frame for each person, right? For each person. I mean, even as the Bodhisattva, right? Just imagine how much the Bodhisattva went through in the stories, right? Being a person who was working towards enlightenment. I mean, if we've spent eternity in this cycle of rebirth and then just imagine the things we would have done. Who are we to judge, other people? Truly, right? Now, disassociation. Then we have proximity. Proximity, why? Proximity condition, the demise of the preceding preceding consciousness is vital, pivotal to the succeeding consciousness arising. Proximity. Now see, the passing of the preceding consciousness is vital, is decisive to what? The arising of the next. Do you understand? The next does not, the succeeding does not arise without the fall of the preceding. Do you understand? The succeeding consciousness does not arise without the passing away of the preceding. Yeah, that is why it's decisive. You see how it's decisive there, right? Because the continuity of the consciousness stream is dependent upon the passing of the preceding. Is that clear? Yeah. Then we have continuity, right? Continuity. The stream that continues, right? The stream that continues there. What is continuity condition? Continuity condition, let's look at the thing. Continuity. Here we go. Continue. These are two conditions are identical in meaning. They differ only in the letter, which highlights the same relation from slightly different angles. Formally defined, proximity condition is a condition where one mental state, the conditioning state, causes another mental state, the conditioned state, to arise immediately after it has ceased, so that no other mental state can intervene in between. Continuity condition is where the conditioning mental state caused by the conditioned mental state to arise immediately after it has ceased, right? Meaning continuity that happens immediately after it has ceased, the succeeding arises. That is also, you see the decisive support there, right? Immediately after the preceding has ceased, the succeeding consciousness must arise or will arise. The proximity condition is upon the fall of the ceasing of the preceding consciousness, the succeeding consciousness arises, right? Proximity. Continuity is this system of arising and passing. When the preceding ceases, the succeeding arises, the continuity of it. Do you understand? The continuity, it is only different in letter. The proximity conditions talks about the importance of or the relation between when this ceases, it conditions the conditioned state to arise immediately after it. The continuity condition is upon the ceasing of this, this arises. Do you understand? It talks about the continuity of the consciousness stream, right? Between the conditioning and the conditioned. Is that clear? How is it decisive? Because without the ceasing of the preceding, the succeeding will not arise. Yeah, hence it is decisive. Then we have, does that make sense, everyone? Then we have repetition. Right?
Bhante, when you say it only differs in the letter, what it means, it's just semantic. They have explained the same thing. In one they said this must cease for the other to come, which is the proximity. Other one they said that other one comes because of the continuity of the process. So
yes.
it's just, yeah, but
the point that we are looking at from.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
one speaks about the importance of it ceasing, one talks about the continuity process.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Thank
both
you.
of which is, it is pivotal that before the preceding ceases. That is how it is decisive support, always. Then we have repetition. Repetition is when, for example, jhavanas, when there is repetitive, when the same consciousness arises, the power of the consciousness increases. So the first consciousness does not fall under repetitive condition. Why? Because there is no jhavana consciousness before it, supporting the first one. Repetitive condition arises from the first to the one before last. Because after to the last, because one to the last. Why? Because repetitive. Yeah.
So Bhante, why one to the last, second to the last? The first is not repetitive because there's no jhavana.
Sorry, second to the last.
Yeah, thank you.
Second to the last, right? Because of the repeating condition. Now, what is important in repetitive condition? The fact that it repeats, right? So the conditioning state is decisive to the conditioned state, isn't it, everyone? Without which it will not be repetitive condition. Is that clear? The conditioning state, the jhavana consciousness is important. The type of jhavana consciousness is important. Why? Because that is what repeats. That is what creates a repetition. And that is what increases its power from the one up until the last. Second up until the last. Right? Because there is a jhavana consciousness before it continuously supporting the increase of power of that consciousness. Do you understand? Yeah? Is that clear? That is how the conditioning state, which is the jhavana, whatever jhavana consciousness, is a repetitive condition, and it becomes decisive. Why? Because that decides the power of the mind. Yeah. Then we have absence and disappearance. Again, same. Only differs in the letter. Only differs in the letter. Absence condition, natu hetu. The fact that it is not there. Right? Absence. Oh. Disappearance is also 4. Proximity. The fact that proximity condition, we've just discussed, absence and disappearance. Like proximity and continuity, differs only in the letter, but the same. What is absence and disappearance talking about? Absence. The fact that the conditioning state is absent allows the conditioned state to arise. Do you understand? Because the conditioning state is absent, the conditioned state can arise. Disappearance condition. Because the preceding or the conditioning state disappears, the condition, the succeeding chitta can arise immediately after it. Is that clear? Immediately after it. It will not intervene. No? Nothing else will come in between it. Immediately after it. Again, absence is because the conditioning state is absent. At this moment in time, it is absent. Now the conditioned state can arise. Disappearing is because it disappears, the succeeding consciousness can arise. Yeah. Is that clear, everyone? Yes, dear.
So Bhante, so is this what happens when you're practicing Indriya Bhavana? We know that you have to have over 3 or 4 of those, Chitta Vritti has to go before an object is strong enough. So if you are practicing this properly, supposing you have something and say anger arises or whatever, but if we are able to see through that fairly quickly, then that the conditioning state for the next jhana nowadays has disappeared, right? And because it has disappeared, so you can then replace it with metta or something else. Is that the process that happens there? That when say you have anger and then instead of you with understanding or with compassion or gratitude or whatever, when you change those things of greed and hatred, is that what this part is? Because that because the conditioned state is not there or it disappears, the same thing, difference in the letter, then therefore those things can be replaced with a different Chetasika or Chitta.
No, not really, because that would point at Atma, self. What you just mentioned,
right,
could then be equated to self, and there's non-self. Nothing is absent or replaced. But what happens is the conditions present for the evil demise, whereas conditions for the wholesome and positive arises.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So it's an intuitive, it's an intuitive process rather because you practice so much rather than with will you actually doing something. So
yes. So in absence and disappearance, just like the proximity and continuity, it's relating to the law of consciousness stream. Right. From 4 different points of view. Proximity. Right after this arises. Continuity. This arises because of the ceasing of the last. Absence, because this is no more, that can arise. Disappearance, because that is no more, now disappears.
Right. So then that happens only because your mind states have developed with Vipassana Bhavana.
No. Anyone. This is talking about Chitta Vritti process. Condition and condition. Conditioning and condition. This is talking about Chitta Niyama.
So in Chitta Niyama, Bhante, can without anything happening. I mean, I understand when you say, Bhante, that it's not soul and self. Yes, you can't voluntarily do something because that's not what we are talking about. So in the Chitta Vritti process, because the object is not so strong or something like that, it disappears. Is that what you're saying? The Chitta Vritti. Why is it that suddenly disappears and it appears?
Because that is Chitta Niyama. So, because it disappears, because Uppada Titi Bhanga, the consciousness only arises for a Chittakana.
So only if you keep on proliferating and having Sankara, that then it just continues.
That stream continues. That stream continues. No, now don't confuse yourself or any other people. Continues in the sense, the streams, the chittaviti, different chittavitis can arise.
Yes.
If you're hating on a person again and again and
Yeah.
again, different streams, hating.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not that the repeating condition or the javanas, this is
Yeah.
chitta niyama.
Yeah. Right.
So
Right.
when a chittakana arises and passes, another chittakana arises.
Right,
That is categorized under proximity condition, continuity condition, absence condition, and disappearance condition.
Right. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, everyone. So now we've finished discussing all of these parts, the synthesis of the conditions. Please go through it through the season, right? When you have time, go through it, right? And go through it, listen to the recordings. And after we come back, we will discuss the analysis of concepts. Okay? The Panyati Beda. And then we will be going on to, of course, the Kammatthana Sangraha. Okay, everyone.
Bhante, when is the next Abhidhamma class?
The next Abhidhamma class will be on the 2nd of January.
2nd of Jan.
The
Right.
1st of January is a Sunday, so this should be
The
the
1st
Monday.
of January is a Sunday. The 2nd of January is also a holiday. If I remember correctly, yes, it is a holiday. It's a bank holiday.
So it will be on the 9th or the 2nd then?
I was thinking the 2nd to start the year with Abhidhamma. Why not? Yeah?
Yes, Bhante,
I mean-
second is good.
I mean, I hope by that time you started on the diet again. So we can come back. Right.
Let's do on the second, please.